Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is monkeypox. No, not every single detail about monkeypox. Just a few of the items that maybe you might want to know.
So, what are the quick facts regarding monkeypox? Number one, this is an orthopox virus, which is a DNA virus group, and basically that includes smallpox, cowpox, camelpox. So, there are other more familiar pox viruses that are in this category. Number two, the first human case was in 1970. This is not a new virus. This has been around for quite a bit, but now we're becoming more familiar with it. Number three, this is endemic to Central and Western Africa. That means it naturally circulates in these areas. And so this is where we get a lot of our information regarding what type of course it takes and how monkeypox usually works. One key question we have to ask is, how does it spread to other people? How does it spread from one person to the other? And there are really four main routes. Number one, if you contact bodily fluids of an infected individual or an infected animal. Number two, if you contact skin lesions, so you touch an infected person's skin lesions, obviously you can get the viral particles from that and become infected. Number three, respiratory droplets. An infected individual or animal breathes out infectious particles, and we breathe that in, it's going to get into our pathways and potentially establish itself. And number four is contaminated fomites. Fomites are an inanimate object, and basically like a desk or a table or a chair. And then those particles are on that particular structure. And if I touch those particles, I could potentially get this infection. So there are quite a few routes that it can spread to you. So once I get infected, there's a period of time where I actually don't show any symptoms. And that's called the incubation period. Now, in the case of monkeypox, that is typically 1 to 2 weeks. What is happening during this incubation period? Basically, I've been infected with the virus. It's starting to multiply itself in the area that I got exposed to it. And finally, it starts to spread to lymph nodes. The lymphatic system is basically like a second circulatory system, and it's in charge of a lot of the immune system. And so we'll see why that's relevant when we look at the actual symptoms. So after this 1 to 2 week period of no symptoms, then it starts to manifest itself. And what does that look like? Well, it's not going to look like skin lesions at first. It's actually going to look like a fever, and a fever is defined as greater than 38 degrees Celsius or greater than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Then swollen lymph nodes, obviously, if it's in the lymphatic system spreading, the lymph nodes are beginning to swell up because the immune system is engaged in a fight. And in addition to this, you can get a headache. It's described as an intense headache. You can get muscle aches and a profound fatigue. You're just extremely tired because your body is trying to fight this virus. Now, these symptoms last for 1 to 3 days, and that's when the characteristic skin lesion begins to appear. Now, it's not just a skin lesion. This can happen on the mouth and the mucosal surfaces, including the eyes. And these skin lesions don't just happen exactly like you see it in pictures. It evolves over weeks. Now, what does that evolution look like? Well, first it starts off as a macule, which is basically a flat skin lesion scattered throughout the body. Then it grows and elevates and becomes a papule, which is just an elevated skin lesion. And then finally, it begins to have a clear liquid inside of it. We call that vesicles. That clear liquid becomes yellow in color because white blood cells are dying during this fight. And that is what we call a pustule. It's a pus-filled skin lesion scattered throughout your bodies. And this is what we typically see pictures of. These pustules then crust over and fall off. And once they fall off, we say that someone is no longer infectious. What does a swollen lymph node looks like? And here's a picture. We see right behind this young child's ear, there's a swelling. And then there's also on the upper part of the neck, right at the hairline, there's a large swelling. And these are swollen lymph nodes, or AKA lymphadenopathy. And this is one of the prodromal symptoms that we find during the fever stage and the headache and the intense body weakness. These are papules, and this is from a patient with monkeypox. And we see how they all are at the same stage. They're all at the papule stage, where they're just these elevated skin lesions scattered throughout the body, including on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. This is what a vesicle looks like. It is a clear fluid filling each of these bumps, and it's scattered all throughout. This is obviously a severe case. It's likely this individual had a severe immunocompromise, leading it to this virus spreading out of control. Finally, once it's filled with this clear fluid, it'll become a pustule where there's dead white blood cells creating this yellowish color. So this yellowish fluid filling up, and they're all at the same stage once again. This is actually a case of a patient with smallpox, but the teaching is the same, where they're all at the same stage developing and evolving together. Finally, these will crust over, begin to fall off. Once they're all fallen off, you're considered no longer infectious at that point, or no longer able to spread the disease. So one question many people have is, how does monkeypox actually do damage? Well, naturally, if it's all over the skin, it can cause scarring of the skin. If those lesions get to the eyes, it can cause scarring of the cornea, which would cause vision loss. Now, how would it actually kill people? Well, one of the big factors is it can dehydrate you. So those skin lesions can lead to fluid loss, and that fluid loss is so intense that you actually become dehydrated. But it's not the only way you become dehydrated. Let's say those painful lesions are in your mouth and you can't drink or eat, then if you're not taking anything in, you're going to become dehydrated. Another aspect that can create problems is the skin lesions can get infected by a bacteria on top of the viral infection, on top of the monkeypox infection. And so that'll create an even more severe state of things. Finally, if the virus is just replicating out of control, it can start to affect your lungs, causing a pneumonia. It can start to affect your brain, causing what we call encephalitis. And finally, it can cause what's called sepsis, where this virus is running rampant throughout your body, including in your circulatory system. So these are kind of the key ways that monkeypox can do damage and actually take an individual's life. Now, one key point to remember is that most cases of monkeypox do not end like this. As a matter of fact, it's described as a self-limited disease, meaning in the vast majority of people, they're just going to recover from it and do just fine. However, in people who have immunocompromised or poorly functioning immune systems, this can cause a problem like this. And this is the monkeypox that we used to know. Now, if monkeypox is created in a lab and created to be more dangerous or infectious or deadly, that's a different story. But from what we've seen in the past, this is how monkeypox behaves, where people normally just get rid of it through their own natural immunity. Now, if you want to know why I would mention a lab-created virus, please see the link in the description where I talk about some of these topics and how simulations have been done on a more severe version of the monkeypox.
So let's go ahead and recap that. You get infected by an individual. There'll be about a 1 to 3 week period where you're not showing any symptoms. And then finally it begins to manifest itself. So 1 to 3 days of a fever, a tense headache, kind of non-specific symptoms, but maybe even these swollen lymph nodes on your body. Finally, once you start to manifest in the skin is where it's going to go next, or on the mucosal surfaces, your mouth or your eyes. And these lesions are going to progress, start to get elevated, start to build up with fluid. Then the fluid becomes yellow and pus-like. And finally, they'll crust over. And all that takes place by the time you start showing symptoms, and by the time it's all over, is about 3 to 4 weeks. Now, if the infection gets intense, it'll start affecting your lungs, your brain, get into your bloodstream, and cause some major issues. But that's fairly uncommon. In previous cases, now, if this is some sort of super virus that was created in a laboratory, it might very well be a whole different clinical presentation. But we'll have yet to see. Well, I hope you found this video useful. And if there's anything else you want me to cover, please leave a comment and I'll try to take a look at it. And I want to encourage you, don't live in fear, live by faith.